Welcome everybody to Outside the Box Conversations. And I, you know what? You don't know this, but you're a dream guest of mine.
Oh, really?
Totally. You're a dream guest. How does it feel?
It's pretty special.
Are you flattered?
I am. Thank you. I'm glad I put some lip gloss on.
Guys, if it's on video, you know I'm with Ashley Davis from VIDYA Yoga and Fitness.
Yes.
And I am so excited to be around with her. We don't get to chat a lot.
No, we don't.
You even mentioned that you don't even, have we had a conversation?
I think I've seen you in passing at yoga.
Yeah, then that's embarrassing.
Well,
that is not me in my best light, which we're going to talk about because I feel like I need yoga therapy.
Okay.
And you're the perfect person for it.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but first, Ashley, tell me about who you are. Kind of, give me a little background.
Okay.
Start from the beginning.
All right. Well, the very beginning, I was born and raised in Kingsport, Tennessee, and I've always been in fitness. I was a swimmer. I went to College of Charleston and swam D1 at College of Charleston, then transferred to UT. And I got a bachelor's degree in psychology, coached swimming, and then went back to school to get a master's in nursing. And I was a nurse practitioner. After that, I worked for ETSU in a faculty practice setting. I worked at the downtown clinic with homeless patients, uninsured, underserved. And it was a great opportunity. I loved it, but my salary was funded by a grant from the CDC, and I knew that grant wasn't a guarantee. And then I also felt like I just wanted something more exciting. So I applied for anesthesia school at UT Knoxville. I got accepted and became a CRNA, met my husband in anesthesia school.
Shout out to Nate.
Shout out to Nate, yes. And I never wanted to move back to Kingsport. I'm so glad I did. But it was just a great opportunity for us from a job perspective. And we moved back to Kingsport, or I moved back to Kingsport. He moved to Kingsport. He's from Western North Carolina. And we worked at Wholesome Valley and started our own anesthesia business about 5 years after we were at Wholesome Valley. And that was in 2012. And then we thought, well, we've tried the entrepreneurial thing with anesthesia. It's worked well. Let's try fitness. And we knew we just enjoy, the aspect of starting a business and especially if it's something, you're passionate about. It's a lot of fun. It's stressful, but it's very rewarding.
Tell me a little bit about the anesthesia business. I didn't know that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we were approached by a gastroenterologist while we were staff at Wholesome Valley about staffing endoscopy centers and providing outpatient anesthesia for colonoscopies and endoscopies.
Super cool.
Yeah. So we started that business, my husband Nate, and we have another partner. And that was in 2012, and we have more than tripled the size of our business since then.
So that's still going on right now?
Absolutely. Oh. That's why I'm in scrubs today.
We got a fist bump there.
All right.
Rock on. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned CRNA. For the people who don't know what a CRNA does, explain that.
So CRNAs, Certified Registered Nurse Anesthetists, we provide over 60% of all anesthetics in the country. So in rural suburban areas, sometimes you will find CRNAs practicing independently. Often CRNAs work with medical anesthesiologists in an anesthesia care team model. They work together. But there are many situations where it's appropriate and very cost effective for nurse anesthetists to work independent of an anesthesiologist. And in this area, and especially in this time where costs, are an issue and increased costs of healthcare, it's a very affordable way and a very safe way to provide anesthesia. So we had that opportunity and we took it, and our reputation has allowed us even more opportunity. So we're continuing to grow.
So it came about in the sense that you just wanted to try something a little bit different after doing the nurse practitioner thing, and it's so specialized, and that's why I have a buddy who is a CRNA as well, and he loves it. It's such a passion, and I'm so pumped to hear about the anesthesia business.
Right. Yeah. It's for a nurse, like, I love the profession. I haven't always loved it. There were times where I felt like a glorified waitress when I was a floor nurse. And I realize now, like, that those experiences definitely contributed to my ability to grow and to do other things, even though at the time they weren't necessarily very rewarding. But it's a fantastic job. Fantastic.
But there's a lot of pressure with that, and I don't think people realize that, like, there's a lot on the line there. Like, how do you deal with that? And has that helped you in your business ventures? Like, being cool under pressure?
Absolutely. I think it's made me able to assess risk and understand that, like, when you're anesthetizing a patient and it's somebody's mother, somebody's daughter, and their life is essentially in your hands, you compare that risk versus opening a hot yoga studio. And, it's all relative, but it comes back to when you're used to dealing with those situations, and there's a lot on the line, it prepares you for life in general. But I will say I had some great training, very, very good training at UT Knoxville. And so I've always felt very prepared.
That's so cool. And you mentioned you're a swimmer. Was that like a passion of yours growing up? Have you always, wanted to be a D1 swimmer?
Yes.
Or were you just good at it?
Well, I think I was more of a hard worker. Like, my parents and I often have this discussion because my brothers were both swimmers too. And I've seen a lot of people that are a lot more talented than I am in that regard. So I would say part talent. I got big hands and big feet, makes good for good swim. But I like, and this kind of crosses over into yoga, the meditative aspect of each morning, 5:30 to 7, staring at a black line, and the breath and the movement and the rhythmic aspect of swimming. And when you spend, as a collegiate athlete, high school athlete at Dobbins Bennett, 3 to 4 hours a day doing that, there's a lot of clearing of the mind that goes on with that.
And runners feel that as well.
Yes, great comparison.
But I feel like swimming, especially as you get older, is so much easier on your joints. To me, it's a better form of exercise if you're wanting that cardio. It's grueling though.
Absolutely. And the biggest benefit I've seen from it is at my age, the muscle mass that I have, and I think it's really contributed to me maintaining a normal body weight. I do have, I do work out and on a regular basis, but having, a body with a lot of muscle, makes you, a metabolic machine from some regard.
And we're going to talk a lot about yoga today, but do you still swim quite a bit? Because obviously you're doing a ton of yoga.
I don't swim at all. That feeling of jumping in a cold pool, like, if I would swim probably if it was,
I'll be honest with you. I'm not sure you could pay me to jump in a cold pool at 5 a.m. like I know you guys did.
Oh, yes.
Like the hours are insane, and you jump in the pool, you're not even awake, and you just start going.
Yeah, right.
But one thing I do like is that meditative state you get into. It's so repetitive, and you can totally just clear out your mind.
Absolutely.
And there's something like, was that like were you addicted to that?
Yeah, I would say it definitely provided some stability. My first year as a freshman in college, I went to UT and I joined a sorority, and at the end of the year, I just felt like something was missing. And I talked to my parents, and since then I've talked to other people that whose children are finishing or in their freshman year, and they just feel like, it's too much change, And so I spent the summer training, and I'd interviewed at College of Charleston, so I knew the coach, and so I was able to train that summer and get right back into shape and have personal bests even as a sophomore after taking a year off. So
you seem like the type that has lots going on all the time. Did you appreciate that, going from, being kind of a normal student at UT to being a student athlete, in the sense of you got lots going on and it's almost like a job? Like, was that helpful for you? Is that the way your brain works?
Absolutely, but don't get me wrong. I like to have a good time too. So I mean, I knew at College of Charleston it would be a good balance between, I could have gone to UT and swam and never traveled, like sat on the bench and trained, but instead I chose a D1 school that allowed. I was able to travel, go to meets and be on the team, and then also have a good balance. So at that point, I was really just looking for the experience, just finishing college and what kind of environment do I want to spend my time in. But the interesting thing, when I was at College of Charleston, the New York Knicks did their preseason and postseason training at College of Charleston. So when I was there, Charlie Ward, it was right when he was the Heisman Trophy winner.
Yep.
And he was playing for the Knicks. And who else? Patrick Ewing. So they told us, our strength and conditioning coach, who went on to work, Gertie's really licking me now, for the Utah Jazz, he told us, when you're in the weight room, like the Knicks are going to be coming in. If they talk to you, fine, but don't approach them. So I have this vivid memory of being in the weight room, and Patrick Ewing looks over, and he's bench pressing, and he looks over at me and winks, and he says, "Can I get a spot?" And I looked at my trainer like, may I? And he nods. So I walked over and I spotted Patrick Ewing, and then he stood up and kind of shook my hand. And so having that kind of experience, I wouldn't have had that.
You have spotted for Patrick Ewing.
I have.
That's
incredible. Spotted Patrick Ewing.
That is incredible.
Bench pressing.
That is incredible. Like, I'm so jealous right now.
Yeah.
I would have been so nervous though.
I think I was just, 22-year-old, like, in the midst of training. And then Charlie Ward, I met him because, he came and talked to some of the athletes. But just getting to be around them and the whole team, working out alongside them, it was a really cool experience.
It's such a cool experience. I'm really glad you shared that, because it's explaining how, because I've known you're driven, and now I kind of understand your background in terms of like where that's come from. And, athletics has played such a big part in your life, and obviously health has. And so tell me how you went from, being a CRNA to wanting to get into the fitness world in addition to healthcare.
Okay.
Like, tell me, and with Kingsport.
Sure. So I always consider myself like the ultimate fitness consumer.
Yeah.
Like whenever I would travel, I would look up the latest boutique fitness studio, just seeing what's out there. And I initially became a spinning instructor. That was in 2001. And so that was my initial love. I did that for years.
Was this before spinning became like what it is today?
Definitely way before Peloton.
Okay.
It was big at gyms.
Okay.
But it wasn't, what it is today. So I really enjoyed that. And I'd always heard about hot yoga and didn't really know much about it. So one day, it was only about probably 5 years ago, I traveled to Asheville and took a class at Bikram, Asheville, which is now Asheville Hot Yoga. And it's a 90-minute class, and it's 26 postures. It was very structured. There's no talking. You just do the postures. And afterwards, it was the wildest feeling. Like, just afterwards, I felt like I'd had a massage, even though my heart rate was elevated. There was definitely a fitness aspect to it. So I found, and this is when I still worked at the hospital, I think, but I found myself taking any opportunity I could to go to Asheville and take classes there. And then I started to get to know people, and I realized there were a lot of people from Kingsport and Johnson City going there to take classes.
Huh, on a regular basis?
Yes. And I even, oh, you're the Kingsport girl, you're the Johnson City girl, and
Yeah.
we would talk. And so one day I came home and told Nate, I was like, we just need to do this. Like, I mean, we could do this. We're going to stay here. We've got 2 children. We're not leaving. Our business is here. Let's just do it. And at the very least, it'll be a state-of-the-art facility that we can enjoy. And so we opened Vida Hot Yoga in August of 2017, knowing that it might be one of the worst markets in the world for hot yoga, where in the Bible Belt, people still see yoga as a religion. And boutique fitness is a little pricier than the YMCA. And we also have one of the greatest YMCAs in the state, if not the greatest. So we knew it was a risk. And honestly, we've had we've continued to grow. And this quarter, the first quarter of January 2021 was our best quarter we've ever had.
Wow.
Which is, I think, a great thing in spite of COVID and
amazing
everything that's gone on. And we don't do a ton of advertising. It's mostly through social media and word of mouth. So we've had this steady growth.
Well, I remember when you guys opened, because it was such a big deal. Like the fact that Kingsport was getting a hot yoga studio, because, I live in Knoxville and they're huge there, and Nashville. And so in the bigger markets, they're becoming a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today, is just the culture behind hot yoga. Why do you think it's become what it is today? Because there is just a huge following of people who kind of live and breathe by that, 2 to 3 times a week they get to go to hot yoga. You saw it in Asheville. What do you think's behind some of that?
Well, I think there are definitely fitness fads, there are trends, and there are things that, you can tell are not going to last. And I actually had some critics tell me, I had a lot of critics, that were vocal in the beginning, and
just that it wouldn't work in Kingsport,
right? That it's well, why would you do that? I mean, just the idea of going in a hot room with high humidity and exercising. That it would, Gertie's making a scene over here. Just seems so foreign to people, but the thing that gave me so much confidence was that initial experience I had, like. That it's just something so different. I went in from a fitness aspect, and then the more classes I took, the more experiences I had, people I met, it evolved into much more than that. And so I find, talking to members, we'll have people that quit their membership for 3 months because they're traveling or they're having surgery, or maybe, it's not in their budget. But most of them always come back because they realize how much better they feel, they move, how much more productive they are, centered, grounded. And so to me, that's one of the most gratifying aspects of it, is just seeing what a positive impact it makes.
Well, one of the things I hear from, I know a lot of the members at now VIDYA Yoga and Fitness, it's they want to sweat. They go there to sweat, and there's something rejuvenating about that. Do you and I know you guys have a heating system that's different. Why don't we go into some of the health benefits of an infrared type situation?
Right. Well, not all hot yoga studios have infrared heat. And I knew, being in healthcare, I knew the benefits of infrared heat. There are a couple of infrared saunas in the region, like businesses that have the saunas where people will go and pay, so much per minute to sit in the sauna. And I realized that there were studios that have, being the consumer, going around, what kind of heating system do you have? What kind of humidification? So we knew that we wanted to be able to provide that benefit. Because if you're going to do it, why not hit it from every direction? So the infrared heat, really the big thing you notice a difference. So if you were to take a yoga class in a studio that had conventional forced air heating versus infrared heat, you feel the heat in a conventional heated studio, it almost like hits you in the face, like you're standing in front of a heating unit, like like I'm trying to think of like the baseboard heating, when you feel it's like dry and it's like it hits you. Infrared heat, what it does,
like thick.
Yes, right, right. And it affects your, like, it's like the heat in the car, where you just feel dry and you feel, but infrared heat heats objects. It doesn't heat, so it doesn't warm the ambient air. Now, the ambient air temperature may rise because if you have 30 people in a, 900 square foot room and they're absorbing the heat from the infrared heat, the water bottles may feel like your water bottle may feel hot to touch. The flooring may feel hot. It's going to feel hotter. But if you just walk in a room that's heated the same temperature with infrared heat as a conventional heated room, there's a difference.
So when you say like there's going to be some rooms where the floors are actually hot and you can't walk around, but with this particular heating system, you're not going to feel like you're getting burned when you're walking around, but you're getting the benefit of the sweating, etc.
Right.
What is it about infrared? Like, because I've heard so many, all the health people are saying infrared saunas, go to a place like, VIDYA where, they have an infrared heating system. What is it about infrared that really impacts your health? Okay.
Well, infrared heat penetrates your tissue. So it can penetrate up to 4 centimeters, the depth into the tissues. And anytime you have heat, a lot of times when you're exposed to heat, as a nurse, if I'm trying to put an IV in a patient and they're cold, they're vasoconstricted, it's harder to find the vein. With heat, you vasodilate, you increase, blood is increased, blood flow is increased. You have a release of nitrous oxide that is also associated with a vasodilatory response. So all of that contributes to increased blood flow. And when you have the increased blood flow to tissues, you also have the ability to take oxygen, remove toxins, reduce the inflammatory response. So all that comes down to one of the great benefits from a fitness standpoint of infrared heat is the associated reduction in inflammation, delayed onset muscle soreness.
Because of the blood flow.
Absolutely.
So you want to vasodilate.
Right.
Interesting. Okay. Right. Does that... I'm a cramper. I've always struggled with cramping. Would that help with cramping, out of curiosity? Do you want more increased blood flow?
It depends on what's causing the cramping.
It could be like lack of sodium.
Absolutely.
Right.
Electrolyte imbalance. It could be, something you're predisposed to because of your genetic disposition. So I'm not really sure, about if it's directly related. We definitely, when you are sweating, you definitely want to be aware that you're also losing electrolytes. But one of the things that's been shown with infrared heat, especially people that are exposed to it over time, is they get used to the heat. So they sweat quicker. And this is definitely,
and you want that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
They sweat, and this is something that's been researched. Actually just read a study yesterday about, a sports team that went through like a heat, acclimatization training where they were exposed to heat and high humidity. And, they found that it's kind of like altitude training. Like if you train in high altitudes, when you come back down, it's same thing with heat training. If you're used to training, it's a stressor to the body. The body's trying to conserve fluid, electrolytes. And after you do it repetitively, the body's like, okay, I can deal with this. So that's when it sweats. Yes. Okay. And you become more efficient at cooling. But you also, they've also found that plasma volume is increased, and that over time, there's not as much electrolyte loss. So So what I get excited about is seeing where, and I'm hoping when we open our studio in Johnson City, I would love to be involved with research because there's not a lot of information out there. But like altitude training or any other extreme, what infrared heat in particular and this heat acclimatization can do for athletes.
So as you are exposed more, so say you go to hot yoga more in the infrared heating system, your body becomes more used to the heat. Mm-hmm. Thus you're able to handle the heat better.
Absolutely.
And also you start to sweat earlier.
Yes.
Okay, so you want to like immediately get like the beads of sweat as you walk in, but explain to me you're not losing as much sodium because I would love, like, that's so fascinating.
Well, there are just some studies that I've read that over time, it's a compensatory mechanism. Your body's able to conserve sodium and chloride.
So with sweating and being in heat,
yes,
and your body learns how to adapt to that.
Right. So they've analyzed the sweat, the content, and that they have shown that there is a conservation of electrolytes in people that have achieved that over time, where they've the heat acclimatization. So, and we often find people that come in, I don't sweat. My mom's one of them. She's a 72-year-old postmenopausal. I mean, the person that definitely is like, do not put me in a hot room. And she was also someone who, I'm just using her as an example, that just said, I never sweat. And I always want to say, hang in there. If you can come, and anecdotally, it seems to be about 3 times a week for several weeks, people start to get okay, I'm comfortable, I'm sweating more. And if you look around, the yogis that are there the most often generally are the ones that sweat the most. And that just may be my experience. That's not a scientific observation, but
I'm an exception to that because I'm a terrible yogi. And when I go,
I don't believe that. Let's see it. Let's see your tree pose right now.
they can't handle that.
Okay.
But I'll go, and I'm that dude who is in a puddle. I'm among all these beautiful women. And I'm the guy that's just got, puddles of sweat, panting, struggling, looking at the time like, oh my God, I've been here for 10 minutes.
Wait, this isn't a good business promo here. Okay. So
no, I think it's just not a good
promo.
promo.
I love your honest opinion.
Me.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, it's just, but what I'm learning is that that's okay. Like, if
absolutely.
You want to be sweating that much.
Right, absolutely. The other aspect that we've not touched on is the high humidity. If you're in an environment that's dry, your body cools by the evaporative heat loss. So when you sweat, the energy transfer, the heat from your core is transferred to the surface of your skin, and then you have evaporative heat loss. Well, when you have an environment that has high humidity, it's much more difficult to achieve the cooling from the evaporative heat loss because you can't really, because of the gradient of the humidity that's in the air relative to what's on your skin. It's a much smaller gradient than what it would be if you had sweat on your skin. You were in a dry room. Like you're not gonna evaporate the heat. Like the heat.
It's almost like it opens up your pores, and it just it's like a release or something, and that's why it's a detoxifier.
Mm-hmm.
Would that explain some of the detoxifying benefits, I guess?
Yes, I think so. I try not to promote that too much, just because, in the literature, there's definitely some great studies that support detoxification, mercury, lead. There's some other toxins, heavy metals that, they have found in sweat. But I try not to get too much into that, just because those studies, I really want to promote things that are definitely have been studied and studied and studied. But from what I've seen, actually, I read a study yesterday about the World Trade Center. They took some firefighters, first responders that were at the World Trade Center on 9/11, and and they were there weeks after 9/11, where the toxins, the PCBs, dioxins in the ambient air were extremely high. They measured their levels, their serum levels of those toxins before they put them on a regimen of sauna therapy, very similar to the environment of hot yoga. They also gave them vitamins and had them exercise. And the one thing I remember is the whole group had a 65% reduction in PCBs in their blood.
I believe that.
Right.
Like without a shadow of a doubt. Like I believe that so much.
Yeah. And that was a study out of University of California, UCLA's medical school. And so, I think there's definitely, you can definitely say that there is a detoxifying aspect for it,
So for the people who have never experienced hot yoga, like what's some advice you could give to them to get into it? Because I know it can be intimidating. You know, it's a hard class, So if they want to get into it, what's some tips to like some expectations, ways to kind of ease your way into it? And then, because it feels like the more you do it, the better the benefits are going to be for you once you become acclimated to the heat. That seems to be the game,
right?
Is getting used to it. And we haven't even touched on the yoga part,
right?
My God,
that'll be part 2. I definitely, that's the biggest barrier for us, is people that feel like they've got an idea of what yoga is in their mind, and the intimidation factor. But I can tell you, our studio, the people that we admire the most are the ones that come in and don't have the 6-pack, or you can see that look like they don't know where to go or what to do. And to me, like, those are the people I admire, because it's easy to come in, like if you're super fit and you're confident, any fitness modality.
Sure.
So having an open mind and just trusting the fact that the benefits are way going to outweigh that feeling that you have of feeling, I don't belong here, or I don't know what to do. I can't touch my toes. It's like, well, none of us were flexible when we first started doing this.
Yeah.
And we do some crazy stuff at our studio, arm balances. There's a festival, Johnson City Yoga Festival, June 12th in downtown. And they've asked our studio to do the arm balance part of the festival. And it's very physical, but it's something that I wasn't doing 5 years ago. I wasn't doing 4 years ago. But I would say just about anybody that can get up and walk up 2 flights of stairs, and, has a reasonable amount of strength for their age can learn that. So,
yeah. And I think with yoga in particular, it's one of those things that you can see improvement. It's so obvious.
Yes.
And there's something about that just in anything in life, just to see, I was here before and now I'm here. It's just like, with golf, people hit one great golf shot and it's like, all right, I'm hooked,
Yeah.
Have you noticed, it seems like you yourself and you are a yogi, being able to see it. Well, I wasn't able to do that 5 years ago and now you are.
Yes. And one of the things, we have a teacher training program at our studio, and we're heavy into anatomy. We're heavy into cueing. But one of the things, we just wrapped up Saturday night with our last teacher training. We have another one starting in August, is we focus on yoga, but also being symmetrical and working on deficits. So as a swimmer and a cyclist, most of my exercise has been in the sagittal plane, like front to back movement. So I'm weak in my hips. You can ask Ernie. So I've actually saw treatment for performance medicine and he's helped me tremendously to identify weaknesses. And the beauty of yoga is that you work in the sagittal plane, but you also work in the frontal plane, where you're moving right to left.
And sagittal being straightforward.
Yes. Sagittal is like a straightforward running, cycling. The frontal plane is anything. Imagine that the body is between 2 plates of glass. And so anything that you could do between those 2 planes, like side lunges, half moon in yoga, is definitely in the frontal plane. And then the transverse plane, which there are very few exercise or fitness modalities where you get the transverse plane, but the twisting and the binds that we do. it's all encompassing, and you'll find out really quick where you're weak, where your deficits are. And as a 45-year-old athlete, that's super important, because I want to be doing this 20 years from now.
Shoot, yeah.
And also, it's a great feeling as a teacher where you help people identify those areas, and they're able to do more.
Can you, when you were talking, what I was thinking about is the edge. And I know, like, I hear it all the time in yoga classes. For the people who don't know, what does it mean to kind of explore your own edge, and how do you not go too far, and how do you, not come close to it?
Right. Well, I think the edge often can be a mental thing.
Yes.
Right. Where you're, a little discomfort is sometimes good. Sometimes there's progress involved in that. But when it comes to the body and it's associated with joint pain, chest pain, anything like that, or in a heated environment where you can have syncopial episodes, if you have a tendency to have low blood pressure and you stand up quick, you're vasodilated, like we talked about, you definitely don't want to push through things like that. But sometimes conquering that fear or that aspect, something that you've built up in your mind, that may be, getting to the edge and maybe getting beyond that.
Have you experienced that yourself in your own practice? Like, trying to find what that is for you, and maybe pushing back what you thought you could do? Like, have you ever found in your own practice where your mind was holding you back maybe a little bit?
Absolutely. I think for me, the physical practice comes naturally as an athlete. And it's more what yoga has evolved to, for me, is definitely all encompassing. So it's, the physical practice there is very rewarding. But, really challenging myself to still my mind and to come into that meditative space where I can really lower my heart rate. I can, like anesthesia, conquer the autonomic nervous system, where you can do the same thing in yoga with breath. So really disciplining myself. So that's a challenge for me. I enjoy the physical practice, but that other side is always right there saying, okay, you gotta.
Do they go together in the sense that, does your physical practice get better as you train your mind to become more still, to slow your heart rate down? Have you noticed, is there any sort of correlation, or, can you be killing it on the physical side, being, getting in all these poses, and perfecting, different stances, etc., but your mind is all over the place?
Absolutely. So one of the aspects of yoga that we talk about is the Tristana method, which is bandhas, which is like, your core, and I can't talk about bandhas and summarize it all here, but also your dristi, which is your focus, and then also pranayama, which is your breath. So if you're chaotic in your practice, it's going to show up. It's eventually, like, it's going to show up either in your balance. So if you can control the breath, and just be aware of your breath, and not necessarily, if you're, at a high metabolic rate and your core temperature's up, like, you're going to need to breathe off the byproducts of that metabolism. Your respiratory rate naturally is going to get higher, but just being aware of that. And then when you come down in the more grounded postures where you're not exerting as much physically, just being aware of your breath and acknowledging it's time to settle down. I think there's that mix, but dristi is something that we often talk about in yoga, in any pose, that there's a focal point where your eyes go, and it helps with focus, it helps with balance, and it helps to decrease that chaotic nature.
It's called dristi.
Dristi.
I love that, because I've always been fascinated with, like, where your aim is, and how that keeps things, centered in your life.
Absolutely.
In general. So, like, in practical terms, in like a yoga practice, would that mean just, focusing on a spot on the wall or focusing on a spot on the floor? Is that
right?
okay?
So certain poses, like often we'll say Urdhva lifted dristi, and in Sanskrit Urdhva, I'm not sure. It's upward lifted dristi. So in some poses, let's say like Vashisthasana, which is side plank, we'll cue to lift your top arm and gaze at your hands. And so side plank can be hard enough on its own, but when you lift the arm and you take your gaze, it requires a significant amount of strength, balance, and focus to really take that gaze where it's supposed to go.
Interesting, because I can, even as you're mentioning, I could feel myself. I could feel how I would fall off balance there.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're saying is, as you learn how to do that, your body responds in a healthy way.
It becomes more natural, and it's just it's about alignment, but it's also about focus. Often when we talk about dristi, you don't want to look at like a logo on the shirt in front of you, or because that, if that's a person, they're going to be moving, and that's, you want to find a fixed focal point. And for each posture, it's different. So
can that help with your breathing as well?
Absolutely.
Because I feel like if you're focused on that fixed point, it almost allows you to become more aware of your breath because your mind has that anchor.
Mm-hmm.
Am I
absolutely
totally off? Okay.
Absolutely.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. And it allows you to slow down your breath and to really get into the posture.
Which allows you to kind of reach that edge physically as well.
Yes.
Because you can kind of sit in it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I want to be respectful of your time, and I know you've got a lot going on. So tell me a little bit about, you mentioned Johnson City, and I'm already excited about it.
Yes, we are too.
Tell me what's going on in Johnson City, and I know it's big.
Okay. So we have not announced this. So performance medicine. Thank you, Ben.
We will edit this out if it's not ready.
Yes, right. So when we realized that it was time to move to a second location, we wanted to trademark our name and our brand. So we looked into it, and Vida Hot Yoga was not an option. There's already a studio with that name. So we came up with VIDYA, VIDYA, which in Sanskrit means knowledge or wisdom. So another part of the evolution of our studio in Kingsport was the fitness aspect. So we have bar, and we're also offering HIIT classes at VIDYA Yoga and Fitness in Johnson City. We're also partnering with a wonderful bar instructor out of Seattle. Her name is Adrienne Rabina and Bar Eclipse, and we are the only studio on the East Coast to have a partnership with Bar Eclipse.
No way.
And the interesting story is during quarantine, I don't really like a lot of online classes.
Sure.
It's never really appealed to me. Well, on ALO Moves, which ALO Yoga is a yoga, a fitness and apparel company, but they also have a lot of really good content, like some of the best like Instagram yogis you'll find. Dylan Werner is one, Ashley Galvin. But Adrienne is a bar teacher, and she's one of top 5 instructors for ALO Moves. And I just really liked her bar content. I've never really been into bar, but I appreciated like what we talked about earlier, working in all the dimensions of fitness. And bar is a fitness modality that really targets that, hip abduction, working in that frontal plane.
If you haven't taken bar and you don't know where your weak spots are, it'll find it.
Right.
It'll find those weak areas.
Right. Oh, totally. And she comes from a yoga background, and her bar classes on the West Coast just really took off. And just an East Tennessee yoga teacher, it hit me hard. And so I started doing her bar training, because we do offer bar classes at VIDYA, but we kind of weren't sure what direction we wanted to go into. And she actually reached out to me, and I had a little girl crush on her. I've watched her on ALO Moves, highly produced, and just love her cueing, and she's very into like anatomical cueing. It really resonates with us and what we do at VIDYA. So we set up a Zoom meeting. I'll never forget the day. I'm like, that's, and so actually I got a contract this week from her, and we're going to go into a studio partnership, and she and her husband are coming to East Tennessee from Seattle.
That is so freaking
in September to do a 3-day intensive, and we're going to be bar eclipse instructors at VIDYA. So,
oh my, we got to fist bump again.
I know,
Congratulations! Right? I did not know that. That's so cool.
Can I get on the record that you're going to come take a bar class from me?
On the record.
In Johnson City?
On the record, I'm going to go through all the pain.
Yes.
I'm going to do it.
Okay.
It's on the record. We'll play this video, and we'll somehow document the whole thing.
All right. That'll be fun. Ben goes to bar.
Ben goes to bar. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the pain because I got lots of weak areas.
Okay.
Now tell me, will the Kingsport studio be doing some of this same HIIT stuff as
absolutely.
well?
Okay. Well, not, excuse me. So the HIIT room is it's around 1,000 square foot room, and it won't have infrared heat. So we've got 3 different rooms. We'll also have childcare in Johnson City, so that's a biggie. But our bar room will have infrared heat. Our hot yoga studio will have infrared heat, and it's significantly larger than our one here in Kingsport. But our HIIT room won't be an infrared heated studio. But we do have, we're going to have ultra slides. So the slide boards where you're sliding back and forward, working in that frontal plane.
My hips are killing me just thinking about it.
TRX, Concept 2 rowers, the upright rowers, the ski ergs, and a lot of strength equipment. So
now this seems like an enormous place. Where is it located?
It is on Market Street. So it's in the old Skillville building, and there's maybe the new Watauga Brewery is a good reference. But if you're on Watauga Brewery's rooftop, there's a green space that's for flood mitigation between Watauga Brewery and our studio.
Rock on. Well, I'm so proud of everything you guys are doing, and I'm just so thankful that you took the time to talk with me today.
Thank you.
It's been a blast.
It's been fun.
And I'm pumped about where you guys are going. I'm, pumped and also terrified of my bar experience that's about to happen.
Well, I'm glad you made that commitment.
It's on the record, guys. Ashley Davis, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ben.
Guys, this has been Outside the Box. And as always, we will see you guys next time. But don't go away.
Don't go away.
Come on.